Annenberg Media.
How do we learn to talk? Are we born with some innate ability for acquiring language?
Okay.
Or do we imitate our parents?
Did he fall down?
How do we go from this to this without ever taking a lesson? Language development, this time on Discovering Psychology.
Well, I'm sure I'll be talking to you in the next month.
Do impeach your modesty too much.
Did you discuss the diversion with Director Casey?
LMNO.
Well, it is a huge, huge contract, and we have some major differences.
On that paper that I did with John Worley.
Did you?
Yeah.
The essence of language is human interaction. As speakers of language, we share our own personal reality with others. As listeners, we share in their realities.
Didn't you look at my report?
Yes, I did.
And the other one for Peter. And one for your sister, and one for your brother.
By studying how children learn to use language in social communication, psychologists hope to discover truths about the human mind and about society and culture as well. They seek to understand how this special ability has evolved in our species.
Hi.
Hi.
Ta.
Can you say bye-bye?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Are we born with a built-in readiness to use language? How do we learn how to use words and structure sentences in coherent ways? What role do parents play in teaching children how to communicate? What makes baby talk?
What's this?
As soon as a baby is born, an amazing process begins. A process which we all take for granted, the development of communication and language. With amazing speed, children go from making their first sounds at birth to speaking their first words sometime around their first birthday. And by the time they start school, children are speaking almost like adults, with a vocabulary of over 14,000 words.
I understand because he used words.
But how do they do it?
Yep.
What is the process by which language is acquired?
I win. Pintail.
How much do we owe to nature, our genetic inheritance? And how much do we owe to nurture, the environment in which we learn?
How are you? How are you, Sarah?
Until recently, it was assumed that the process was all nurture, that children learned language by imitating others, mainly their parents. That language was a learned skill.
Thank you.
But in 1957, MIT linguist Noam Chomsky revolutionized the study of language by questioning this assumption.
We look at the very difficult empirical problem of explaining how it is that a young child with very limited information available to him acquires a system of language and knowledge of language that enables him to produce and understand this vast number of new sentences.
Yeah.
Big girl fly.
Jean Berko Gleason, a psychologist at Boston University, is an expert in language development.
Chomsky and his followers believe that human beings come into the world with what they call a language acquisition device, which is an actual neurological structure in the brain. They haven't specified where it is, but they tell us that the language acquisition device makes it possible for children to learn any language anywhere and that only human beings have the language acquisition device, and that the language acquisition device makes it possible for infants and for young children acquiring language to know what the deep structure or the meaning is of language, because the principles are innate.
Ideas about the biological capacity for language sparked the creation of an entirely new field called developmental psycholinguistics. But many psychologists believe that social interaction between child and parent also has a major role to play in the development of language. Social relationships may be necessary to activate Chomsky's language acquisition device. Research has shown that very young babies prefer human voices to other sounds and human faces to other images. Even at only a few weeks of age, they get upset when their parent's voice is paired with the face of a stranger.
Can you look at your mom? You want to look inside? Okay, you open it up for me.
The role of social interaction in language development has been a major focus of Berko Gleason's work.
Who's that? That's the mommy.
Mommy.
We know that human babies are born with special mechanisms in their brain, or special parts of their brain, that are dedicated to the development of language, that they have special capacities that only humans seem to have. But having a special neurological capacity does not guarantee the acquisition of language. In order for language to develop, babies have to interact with other human beings. They have to hear language spoken to them. They can't just learn language hearing it spoken around them or hear language spoken on television and acquire it. They have to interact with other people. Social interaction really is at the basis of language development in children.
Come on. Patty cake. Patty cake.
Babies typically learn language from what's going on around them. They don't learn language abstractly. That is, a baby will hear language embedded in context and understand what the intention of the speakers are, partly because the baby already knows what's happening. In other words, if the mother holds up a bottle and says, "Here's your milk," the baby understands to begin with that the mother is talking about the milk because she's holding the milk up and showing it to the baby. The baby then begins to be able to decode the intention of the speakers because the intentions are embedded in the context of what's going on in the baby's life.
Oh, roll it. That's right. Patty cake.
If you watch mothers and little babies together, you see that mothers do some very typical things that help the baby to acquire language. In English-speaking households, for instance, babies are spoken to by parents or by mothers much more slowly than they would speak to other people. Parents enunciate very clearly when they talk to little babies. Sentences are short and simple. They're full of repetition. People say, "See the book, that's the book, it's a nice book." They make it much easier for the baby to decode what the language is than if the baby simply had to listen to adults talking about politics at the dinner table.
Baby.
Puppy. And the baby. And the baby.
Baby.
This was a perfect example of a mother talking to a young child. For instance, she's talking in a much higher voice than she talks to other people. She's talking slowly. She's talking about the things that the baby is looking at right at this moment. She's doing a really interesting thing, which is she's imputing meaning to the baby. For instance, the baby points up in the air and says, "baby," and the mother's looking around saying, "Where's the baby?" as if the baby's really talking about a baby. As the mother's really trying to make clear to the baby that language has a meaning. If you say something, people are going to try to interpret it.
The mommy. Oh.
So both nature and nurture are at work in the development of language competence. But there's also another critical process at work here. Research has shown that every child in every culture goes through some of the same sequences, the same stages of speaking its native language. This universal process suggests that there is also some form of biological maturation at work. As in walking or eating, what a child can do with language at any given time depends on a developmental timetable. This timetable regulates the maturing of the brain and certain muscles in the mouth and throat that are needed for communication. The first stage in acquiring language may be crying. It's our first act of communication. Babies cry because they're hungry, or tired, or cold, or in pain. And the sound they produce usually provokes the desired social response. Other comparable sounds are coos and gurgles, which begin around the second month. The second stage of language development is the babbling of syllable-like sounds. Babbling is important because it allows a baby to practice making sounds, to group them together, and to vary them by adding intonations. At this point, an infant can distinguish sounds of any language and can reproduce them. This ability is called universal adaptability. But by the time a child is 1 year old, it has lost this flexibility. The child becomes a specialist in its own native language, distinguishing and reproducing only those sounds which are common to that language. Children's first conversations, however, are wordless. They interact with their parents by alternating and coordinating sounds and intonations. And in turn, parents use melodic intonations usually reserved for soothing, arousing, or warning the baby. Intonations that are absent from ordinary adult conversation.
Are you being silly?
This special kind of speech is known as motherese or parentese.
Do you have the feeling that she's communicating with you now already
All
and
the
that she's
time.
paying attention to you really?
Yeah,
and that she's listening to your voice?
Anne Fernald of Stanford University has studied this phenomenon in many cultures around the world.
Long before infants are speaking a language or understanding a language, they're communicating very actively with their parents. They're understanding their parents. In our research, we're very interested in how this pre-verbal communication gets established. And what we're doing is recording in cultures around the world the kinds of daily episodes that are very common in the life of an infant. Okay, let's see if we can get a big smile now. So far, we've looked at a number of European languages, French, Italian, German, British English, as well as American English. And we've also looked at a Nigerian language called Hausa, as well as at Japanese. What we're finding is that the melodies of mother's and father's speech in these situations are very similar. And we're hypothesizing that the melody is the message, that the musical contour of the voice is carrying the meaning to the infant long before language is doing the work.
Is that my Becky?
And babies are not yet attending to words or to linguistic units of information, but they're reading something about the mother's emotions, her intentions, her feelings, through the kinds of melodies that she uses.
Oh boy, can we have a smile from my girl?
This device here is an oscilloscope hooked up to a pitch extractor, which will allow us to look at the melodies or the intonation or pitch contours that are used in the mother's voice when she's speaking to a preverbal child. Let me give you a couple of examples. In American English, if you wanted to praise the baby, to let the baby know that you're happy about something that he or she's done, you'd say, "Good boy, yeah, good." Up and down, and this is the typical pattern we're finding. So you see the pitch starts low, goes up to a crescendo and down again. In Italian, we find a very similar melody. Bravissima, bravissima. In German, you'd say, "Ja, schön, toll, gut machst du das." Again, we see here this rise-fall pattern, the melody that goes up and then down again, up and then down again, reaching a very high pitch peak at the top. We're finding this rise-fall pattern in every European language we've looked at and also in our recent recordings in Japanese. Now, another thing that frequently happens in a baby's life is that the mother says, no, the child's about to head for a light or an electrical outlet where there's some danger possible, or to head over the stairs. And so the mother will say, no, no, stop that, no, using a short, sharp kind of vocalization that's much lower in frequency. In French, it would be non, non, c'est défendu. Again, short and sharp and staccato in quality. In German, the same sort of thing. Nein, nein, magst du nicht. Short and sharp and not smooth the way the praise contour was. Again, here we're finding universal melodies in Japanese as well as the European languages in the kinds of intonation or pitch contours that the mothers are using to convey this message to a baby who does not yet understand the words.
That's right, just calm her down.
It's very important that we go beyond this to look at other kinds of cultures with very different attitudes toward babies, toward the expression of emotion, in order to really test our hypothesis about universality.
After children have practiced the elemental aspects of speech, they're ready for the third stage of language development, which comes toward the end of the first year, the one-word stage.
Hi.
The earliest words are part of a behavioral ritual, such as saying hi or bye. The next set of words are those that express relationships of various kinds. First come relationships between objects and actions, such as saying ball to mean throw it or get it. Then come relationships between objects, such as saying fishy when pointing to an empty tank where fish once swam. And finally come words that are meant to affect events, such as again or more, when a child wants another push.
Again.
What is this one? What is that?
The airplane.
That's an airplane? Great. When children learn to use words like ball or fishy or again, they're really learning how to use symbols. Words, after all, stand for something else, the objects or actions being described. And symbols can only be used with any degree of proficiency when a number of mental abilities have matured sufficiently, sometime in the second year of life. To use words as symbols, the child's memory must be able to store images or memory codes of events and objects, and be able to retrieve them with the appropriate words that symbolize them. At the same time, the child must also understand how to manipulate tools to make things happen. These tools can be people as well as objects.
Pizza, 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 pizzas.
In fact, parents are the most significant tool the child learns to manipulate to achieve its goals. And language is the most effective way to manipulate them.
Rabbit, please.
There it is.
What's this?
Next comes the two-word stage.
Get out.
No matter what their native language, all normal children around the age of 1.5 years begin to use two-word phrases to express a number of common functions. Locating and naming things, demanding and desiring things, describing actions and situations, questioning, modifying, and qualifying.
A ducky.
A ducky.
Duck, duck.
Finally, in the last formal stage of this early development, the telegraphic stage, 2-year-olds form simple sentences, mostly of nouns and verbs. The sentences lack plurals, articles, and tenses, but they do maintain the typical word order of actor first, action second, and object last.
I'm making a prat. I'm making a prat. Take me, I do. I do want to. I'm Mr. Pancake.
After the age of 2, as a child's mental abilities develop, early restriction on how much information he or she can get into one coherent statement are lifted. By the age of 4 or 5, the child is using language in much the same way as an adult does. Its biggest task during these early years has been to discover the underlying regularities in the way adults use language, the rules of grammar and syntax. Dan Slobin is a psycholinguist at the University of California at Berkeley. Slobin has studied how all children acquire a system of grammatical rules on their own, without imitating the people around them.
For the past 20 years or so, we've been sending teams of researchers out all over the world to jungles, cities, villages, recording speech of little children to see how it is that children begin to acquire their native languages. And we found by now that regardless of what kind of language it is, what kind of social setting the child is learning under, 2-year-olds are beginning to apply the grammatical structures of the languages that they hear.
And where do you go to school?
I go in art school.
And what do you do at art school?
I paint.
For example, in English, we follow very strict word order. We always first talk about what we're going to do and then what we're going to do it to. So we say, give me a cookie, drink the milk, show me your hand. The first word is always the word about the action. The second word is the word about the object. Now, that division between action and object words seems to be quite universal in languages, and children pick that up quite early. In English, they also quite early in their own 2-word speech pick up that word order pattern. So even if they're saying things that are quite short and simple, English children will say things like, I want cookie. They won't say cookie I want. They'll say more milk, not milk more. They'll first talk about the action, and then they'll talk about the object. So they're already speaking grammatically. Now, if you were to ask your ordinary parent in the street how their child learned to talk, they would probably say, he just imitated. What's the problem? Well, one problem is if you listen to what children say, they often say things that they couldn't have imitated. So the children might say, a child might say something like, I braked the glass, or I fall down. Now, the adults don't say things like braked and falled, but the child does. And if you hear a child saying things like braked and falled, this means that the child has worked out the pattern for forming the past tense in English. English doesn't always follow that pattern, but the child has decided that once you find a pattern, it's neat to stick with it. So that even if one doesn't say braked or falled, and the child doesn't hear it, for a long time the child will use this pattern. So for a long period, for about the ages of 3 to 5, children are very persistent in trying to build a regular kind of grammar. We see this across all languages. Wherever languages show bits that are irregular, children try to make them fit their own regular pattern. They have an uncanny sense of how a grammar should be structured.
Goalie, forward, and halfback. What's the name of your team?
So now we're 6 years old, and we've acquired a highly sophisticated language to help us navigate through all the complex environments in which we have to function. But what happens when we bump into other people who are also navigating their way through social situations? How do we coordinate our intentions with theirs to avoid conflicts and to gain the ends we both want? How do we learn the rules of conversation?
I have a Judy sister. No, you don't. I have my cousin Joel and my cousins Gago.
According to psycholinguists, most dialogues are highly structured forms of social communication. And they include 3 essential features that must be understood and shared by both parties. The first is opening conversations in ways that signal the willingness to converse.
Hi.
The second is understanding the unwritten rules for taking turns. And the third is closing conversations by mutual agreement. When these seemingly simple acts are not carried out properly, the result is confusion and even distress.
The duck going to a city?
Parents teach their children the rules of dialogue in a number of ways. They engage them in conversations. They ask questions and seek replies. They teach them what to say after someone has said or done something, such as thank you or yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please, please, please.
Please, please.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Henry was too hungry to resist.
These early social activities not only help children to use language to gain their own ends, but also enable them to assist others in achieving their goals.
What is it?
What is what?
That.
That's Henry talking to the banana lady.
Hannah, your food's ready.
Without a stable structure of social verbal interaction, they wouldn't be able to use language in ways that are conversationally correct. Children have to be taught how to collaborate with other conversationalists.
Want some pancakes? Sure.
Well, I'm sure I'll...
What would life be like without language? It would be life without access to the world of ideas, without any connection to the hearts and minds of other people. Language is fundamental to our very humanity. But before we communicate our sense of the world, we have to perceive it. In our next program, we're going to focus on perception as the critical link between the solitary, isolated organism and everything else that exists. Perception enables us to experience the universe as it is, and to redesign it as it might be, not to mention persuading others to see it our way. The Many Worlds of Perception, next time. I'm Philip Zimbardo.
Annenberg Media. For information about this and other Annenberg Media programs, call 1-800-LEARNER and visit us at www.learner.org.